Now, I've been saying a lot of nice things about Apple lately because of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the phone that I currently use as my main phone. I mean, it's great. It has a lot of great features. It's smooth, it's fast, it's awesome. But it actually wasn't that way when I bought it, and it only kind of recently got that way. Apple, we need to talk. We need to talk about some things. I feel like you're losing your way. And while I'm kind of a newer customer of your phones, I'm not a newer customer in general. I've had an iPad for a long time, and I've been watching you guys for a long time. And y'all slipping. You're slipping. And I understand that apparently you're going to try to fix this. My question is, why wasn't this fixed a year ago? Or even before that? You're messing up, Apple. And I need to tell you why. Right after this!
This is, you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below. But for now, let's just get into the video. Y'all messing up, and you're messing up in ways that don't really make a lot of sense. And quite frankly, I'm kind of tired of it, and I know so are a lot of other people. And while you've promised to make changes, you've actually promised this before. Now, it seems like you're putting things into play that will keep this from happening, but I'm not sure. A lot of you probably going, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm talking about iOS, especially iOS 13. You see, Apple, you've tripped across the finish line. You made all types of mistakes with iOS 13, so much so that you've impacted the customer experience. The one thing you shouldn't have touched. The one thing you shouldn't have touched in a negative way. And you tripped it. You dropped the ball on this one. And the thing is, y'all know it. It's not like I'm just saying things to be mean. You guys had a recent meeting with your software chief who basically said, we're doing things different. We are not going to have the same amount of bugs that we had in iOS 13 in iOS 14, because that was shambolic. That's right. Look it up if you don't know what it means. So what's going on? For those of you who don't have iPhones or don't know, when the iPhone 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max launched, it launched with iOS 13. But very quickly, iOS 13.1 came out, and that's kind of unusual because iOS 13.1 was actually announced like before iOS 13 even was released on the new iPhone. That says a lot. That basically means that iOS 13 was never really ready. Now, it's typical to watch operating systems get updated within a month or so of release because you know they have to get it out for the piece of hardware that they're shipping with, and then you want a quick follow with, some fixes that maybe you couldn't get to in time. But it seems to me there was a lot of evidence going into iOS 13 this thing maybe should have never been released. And I've kind of talked about this before. Apple really pushed and pushed and pushed to make sure that the iPhone 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max launched on a certain date. I mean, if they just waited a couple extra weeks, which, they totally could have, they wouldn't have had to worry about this. But what I'm thinking is, when you mess with someone's smartphone, which in a lot of times, in a lot of cases, is the sole means of communication for people to the outside world, you're really putting them in danger at times. Let me real quick clarify what I mean by that. If you needed to call 911 and your iPhone locked up, you're in danger. You need a phone that's going to work all the time. Now you might be thinking, well, did that actually happen? I don't know. I don't think it happened. At least I hope it didn't happen. I know that there were a lot of issues with cell reception, emails, apps not loading properly, and me personally, I actually couldn't turn my phone on after I rebooted it on one of the operating system updates. I don't even remember which one it was. It might be 13.12. I can't remember. But I remember I powered it off to reboot it because of one of the many bugs, and it wouldn't come back on. The only way I was able to power it back on is to plug it in. I actually had to wait a couple minutes and then it came back on. And since the update since then, it's fixed it. But what if that had happened and I was in an emergency and my phone was off and I couldn't turn it back on? There was an article online recently that talked about one of the reasons this might have happened is how many features Apple is trying to put into these smartphones. And listen, this is happening across all of the providers out there. Samsung, Huawei, all of them are trying to put a whole bunch of features into their phone to kind of gain that advantage. But iOS doesn't really need to do that. Apple doesn't need to do that. Their competition is themselves. They don't really need to compete against Android. You either like iOS or you don't. And one of the main reasons people like Apple phones is because they just work. They work right, they work well, and as soon as you start breaking that, there's actually a lot of other phones out there for a lot less money to do, in some cases, a lot more things. So breaking the one thing that you're known for is a no-no. Like, you should delay the phone if you are trying to release something that just fundamentally breaks the phone. And it wasn't just people using the phone, it was app developers that were having problems with iOS 13 as well. I mean, some of them were complaining on Twitter about how this was just terrible and making their jobs and their lives miserable. That's pretty crazy. So what Apple's trying to do now is they're trying to put in these new fixes into daily builds, which are basically the daily software for the operating system, these flags that will allow people to turn off features that aren't quite ready so that testers can test the operating system a lot quicker. In the past, they had to wait for everything to start working before they could test it. And at some point, you run out of time. And at one point, Apple actually had a meeting about this, January of 2018. They had some type of meeting and they got together, and the software chief basically said this: we're concentrating too much on features, we need to get back to functionality. And iOS 12 did that. As a matter of fact, iOS 12 ran better, the battery life was better, like everything was great about iOS 12. And they only needed 2 updates in the first 2 months, only 2. Now that seems like a lot, but for a phone, you know, listen, I'll take them. 2. Do you know how many iOS 13 had in the same amount of time? iOS 13 in the first 2 months had 8 updates. 8. Sounds like Windows. Now, the interesting thing about this is way earlier in the year, a lot of people knew in Apple that this was going to be a problem. Back in April and May, they knew that this was going to be an issue, trying to make the launch of the iPhone 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, and 11. Like, they knew this. They called it a mess internally, and there just wasn't going to be enough time. But again, with so many features trying to be packed into every single operating system update to make it better than the last, Apple just kept pushing forward. But the cool thing about Apple is they're able to push their updates out across all the phones at one time. Unlike Android, where it's splintered so many places that literally an update goes from Google to your phone manufacturer and then to your carrier, which, I mean, you're talking about upwards of a year. But even so, even with that advantage, about half of them got the update within the first couple of weeks, which meant still half of people had a broken experience and probably lost them customers. Because here's the thing, we live in a time where our phones are not just kind of a plaything. They are our communication out to the world. Sometimes they're our transportation, our ability to get food, our ability to pay others or be paid. These are incredibly, incredibly useful tools. They've become so integrated into our lives that we have to treat them that way. And Apple, you have got to start treating these updates like they are life and death. Because if your phone locks up in the middle of a 911 call, you're getting sued. Every update must be considered absolutely critical, and you really have to start thinking, is this thing worth it? Is this one little feature that may break something else worth implementing? And I think most times the answer is going to be no. Stability above all is what your new mantra should be. You're known for great products, and you have them, and you're known for great operating system integration, which you have. But lately, you're known as kind of a bug monster. You're just kicking out bugs. And as someone who's new to the ecosystem, I gotta tell you, like, I like the integration, but y'all ain't getting a pass from me on this. I am gonna stand here yelling at you until you get it right. It's not right for someone to spend $1,300 for a smartphone that only kind of works some of the time. It's unacceptable. And even more so, it's worse for someone who even spent maybe $600 or $700 on a smartphone who can't barely afford that to have the same experience. It's unacceptable. And if you're going to keep people from communicating and using their phone in a way that's absolutely necessary, and you think that that's a better way to move your company forward, I got news for you, baby. It's not going to last. But what do you think? Did Apple do okay with iOS 13? Did you have problems like I did? Tell me in the comments below, we can talk about it, because this is getting nuts. And y'all must have thought I was gonna come on here and talk about how great Apple was. Listen, they're good, but they messing up. If this video helped you out in any way, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if it didn't, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I'm here every single week, having a blast. Hope to see you again real soon. Peace and love, peace and love. Better update my phone.